calls us beautiful people, then tells us who we have on. The best part.
All right, everybody. Thank you for coming back to this show. It is actually my first episode of the new year, and I am bringing on a very special guest. I'm very excited about this one. He is an American actor and writer. He has written different books like Glim and Gaunts, the Lincoln Bright story, Oddities, and An Evening to Die For, all kinds of other different stuff. But he's also known as a voice actor. He's done different video games, but he's very well known for playing the voice of Zordon. And I am talking about David J. Fielding. Man, how are you doing tonight?
I'm good.
I am very excited to do this. Whenever I reached out to you, I had you email me back and everything, and it was really cool. Got to tell my friends, I was like, guess who I'm going to be having on the show? So kind of a geek out moment for me. Yeah. So I actually did get to meet you. I think it was in 2023 when you were at Northwest Arkansas Comic-Con. It was you and I think it was Austin St. John was there.
Sure. Yeah.
It was
ASJ.
Yeah. It was funny when we were there. He had like a little boom box or something, I think, and he was playing music. And when I walked up to him, he's like, "Yeah, I'm doing this for the ladies."
He's a card, that guy.
He is. Yeah. So I didn't know that you were as close to me as you were, like you said. So I mean, that's probably going to run into you at another con eventually.
Eventually, yeah. I mean, I only have two lined up. One at the end of February and another one in April, and they're both just north of Houston. So
okay, cool. Texas has so many of them too. I mean, it's you throw a rock, you're gonna hit a convention.
And I've probably been to all of them. I mean, they're state, and there's lots of people, and everybody wants to go to convention. So yeah.
Right. Yeah, I'm excited going to the first one this year. Like I said, so it's gonna be a blast. I'm ready to get out there and start, doing it again.
Well, hopefully the world holds together and we'll be able to do it more. So we'll see.
For sure. So there was something that was brought up that, I didn't really think of it this way until I had Chris Kamenly on the show. A lot of what the people do in Power Rangers side of it was voice acting, and especially your part in particular. I know you did the first 31 episodes that you were that you did the voice, and then they used your likeness throughout, the rest of the time.
We only filmed for the pilot for the character of Zordon, and then they just recycled that footage over and over. And as you watch the series, as you watch the evolution of Zordon, he becomes less and less active, less and less moving, and eventually he just becomes sort of like this static image.
Yeah.
And the lips don't move. They stopped fuzzing out the lips, and so
Right.
Whenever Robert Manahan, who took over as the voice of Zordon after I did, he didn't have to match lips movements or anything like that. And but yeah, I mean, from a business production standpoint, it was really smart of them to be able to capture as much footage as they did during the pilot, because they knew that they were just going to recycle it. But from an actor standpoint, it kind of sucked.
Yeah.
Because I didn't get the kind of Hollywood experience that I really would have liked, which is like being in front of camera, being on set,
Right.
seeing your name on the call sheet and that kind of thing. I didn't get any of that, so that was rather disappointing. But
Yeah. Well, and I guess with what has happened recently with AI and stuff like that, I guess in your way, you would already, have a pretty large opinion on something like this, being able to reuse footage and, not really even being a part of it anymore.
yeah, I mean, it's from an artist's perspective, from a creative perspective, AI seems like a real threat.
Yeah.
As far as the alacrity of it, the quickness of how quickly things can get produced. I mean, I already see stuff on YouTube where they have like these 4 or 5 minute short AI films that are, that tell like a full story or whatever.
Right.
And it's just a bunch of dreamlike images, which fake really kind of okay people running down a hallway or
Yeah.
whatever the action is being called for. And the scary thing is it's only going to get better. It's only going to get um, more and more refined. And when you think back to the first Jurassic Park movie
Yeah.
and the realistic look of the T-Rex and the Velociraptors and the movement and everything like that.
Hmm.
I mean, you really felt like those things were living. You really felt like they were alive.
Right.
And so to think that somebody could have already taken all of the lines that I did on the show, fed them into a database somewhere, and then they'll just mimic the voice and get it to say whatever they want it to say.
Right.
And that's again from an artist's creative point of view, it's very frightening because that means that your responsibility, your job,
Hmm.
your the way that a lot of people make their living, that goes away.
Right.
And so I mean, there's that part of me that's like, yeah, we need this kind of like fight this tooth and nail. But on the other hand, you can see the train coming and there's no getting out of the tracks. You know what I mean? It's
Right.
it's going to barrel forward whether you like it or not. And I think one thing that people are not struggling with right now is that the 4 or 5 year olds that are growing up now are going to be so used to that they will not understand why you need to have a real person behind the microphone.
Right.
For
Yeah.
them, it'll be just like, why? I just type it in and it says what I want, and that's fantastic. That's what I need, and they'll go. So
Yeah. Yeah. It,
who's
it,
to say?
it is a very slippery slope there. I mean, people are starting to use it every day. I know that, I know it's been an issue with creators and stuff as well. There's been, I know of a few people who wrote comic books and then, they had somebody who came in to do the artwork for it. And then they find out that they're using AI to create the artwork. And so then they have to start back from scratch, and do something else because, it's based off of other people's work already.
Yeah.
When it comes to even, I know I had somebody on here not too long ago, and we talked about this, and they were talking about how places like Disney and stuff, they have millions and millions of images and stuff that they can use to make their own AI to base stuff off just what they have. That's how they're going to be able to do, James Earl Jones' voice as Darth Vader, even though he's no longer with us.
Right. Well, I mean, Meta just announced that they're going to be adding AI bots to both Instagram and Facebook so that
Oh,
they can uh those bots, the sole reason for these bots is to increase engagement with posts. These bots will go around and they will post on other people's posts to make it look like they're talking with like a real person. And um it it's kind of scary in the fact that it's in some cases it's very hard to determine if you're talking with a real person or not. And then you
right.
have the uh the scammers and the pirates out there who are like, "Hey, good looking, how you doing today?" Or
Yeah.
you get the random DM from somebody, especially if you're an older man uh, who may have been married at one time or whatever, you will get strange messages from strange women, and you're like, I don't know who you are. And then,
Yep.
at the other end of the world, it's somebody in the Philippines or
Hmm.
wherever, and they're just trying to get your credit card number or whatever. But
Absolutely.
but it's not hard to imagine a world where AI is taking all of the best stuff
Hmm.
when what we really want for the AI to do is like do my laundry, do my dishes,
Right.
take care of the chores
Yeah. Make our lives easier.
and allow me to create a world or a story and let me take care of that while you change the oil in my car or whatever. I mean, right now AI is sort of sucking away at all of the things that make being a human being great.
Right. Yeah. It's like I said, it's weird what we're seeing, because even now you're seeing people who are creating whole accounts, and it's just AI stuff that they're putting on these accounts. And going back to one thing you said there, are they going to use those bots? Are people going to pay for them to interact with their posts? Or are they just going to do it randomly? Or how does that work? Because I know there's on Instagram, there's people who, I've gotten tons of messages about this. You're like, oh, would you like more followers? They create these bot accounts to follow and that's, it's cheating is what it is. And that kind of feels like it's going to be that way with the AI as well.
Well, it's all a product of our modern society, which is all driven by financial profit.
Yeah.
It's uh, the more you can profit, the more you use these sort of tools to fake it until you make it, or
Right.
or whatever. And I could spend hours talking about the precipice that we're sort of skirting along,
Yeah.
and are we going to make it or are we not?
Right.
But which I jokingly say, well, if the world holds together, but then there's that part of me that's like, could happen tomorrow. Who knows?
Exactly.
Yeah. And
So
then I wonder why I spend most of my time playing fantasy games. I'm like, yeah, I don't want to think about the real world right now. So yeah.
so we're going to kind of switch things over here. We kind of went down a rabbit hole with AI and everything, which is great. I love that.
It's fascinating. Yeah, it's
It
great.
is. Yeah. Um, so when it comes to writing, because you are a writer, like I said at the beginning, you've written all kinds of different books.
Yeah.
Where do you draw inspiration? Who are some of the people that you kind of looked up to growing up when it comes to writing?
I was a huge, huge Greek myth fan growing up. One of the first books I ever bought with my own money, which is basically my father gave me allowance, and my school had the Scholastic program, which is you could buy books,
Yeah.
for 35 cents or whatever it was, and they would come in a box, and I got to open it. It was like my book.
Yeah.
And one of the first books I ever bought was a book about the 12 labors of Hercules and the other Greek myths, Jason, Perseus, and all that kind of stuff. So I was really a big fan of that. And I grew up in a time when the stop motion movies of Ray Harryhausen, like Jason and the Argonauts, and when dinosaurs ruled the earth, that kind of stuff was playing on Saturday afternoon TV. So I grew up just gobbling up all of this stuff. And
Right.
then as I got older, I started to branch out into pulp novels, Tarzan of the Apes, Princess of Mars, Doc Savage, um, all of the pulp heroes, Tarzan of Gore, uh, The Shadow, all of that stuff, just these really quick men's adventure kind of stuff.
Right.
And then I started to read Stephen King, and Stephen King um, just left everybody else in the dust. I
Right.
mean,
Yeah.
as far as because I never really felt that Stephen King scared me or scared the pants off of me. What he did is he really showed you how fun it was to write a character, to get an inside look to see how this person ticked. And anytime you read a Stephen King book, you get to know way too much information about certain characters that may only be around for like a chapter or two before they get axed or whatever. But to me was great because it's like you're only the main character in your own story.
Right.
Everybody else is the main character in their story. And as you walk through life, you're just going to be guy number three in the coffee shop for somebody else.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think a lot of people forget that you'd only me as David Fielding, I've done a lot of these things, but I'm also an extra in so many other people's stories,
Yeah.
or I'm a special guest star, or uh, a character that was here for a few months and then is no longer there anymore. I mean,
Right.
and that was to me was sort of like it, the stuff that I loved growing up, the Greek myths and stuff that lent me into sort of like this theatrical vein of I wanted to be in the movies. I wanted to be part of an epic story where I got to fight a three-headed Hydra, or and then when I was doing speech and forensics in junior college, I would take some of Stephen King's short stories, break them down, and then do them as a performance. I would read his work as a performance, and that taught me a lot about the power of words and the pictures you can paint with just your voice. And so my inspiration is, it used to be fantasy. I used to read a lot of uh, knights and dragons
Yeah.
and all of that kind of stuff. And then I moved away from that because I felt that at some point, how society treats fantasy, or at least how fantasy was treated through the 70s and the 80s and maybe the early 90s, was just sort of like this, that's for kind of kids kind of stuff,
Yeah.
and we treat it, and it's fine, and then you outgrow it, you
Right.
go beyond it, and so as much as I loved the fantasy stories, because these were stories about people that they fought against the darkness and they won. They, at the end of the day, they beat the dragon, they beat the bad guy, and the world was a better place because of it.
Yeah.
And I started to, as I got older, as I moved into like my early and mid 30s, I started to get very disillusioned with fantasy because I didn't see it translated into the real world.
Hmm.
These were stories that we had been telling each other for hundreds of years.
Yeah.
We tell these stories, Jack the Giant Killer, and then people know these stories by heart,
Right.
but then they don't take place in the real world. They don't fix problems the
Yeah.
way that they should.
Yeah.
And so I became very, very, I don't want to say bitter, but I was very disillusioned with um, stuff like that. And then Peter Jackson and the Lord of the Rings kind of like revitalized things for a while, because you're like,
Yeah.
oh, this is how it should be. This is this, people sitting there with tears streaming down their face at the end of the Return of the King.
Yeah.
And but then again, that was 20 years ago, and still.
Has it been that long since? Really? Oh my
Yeah, yeah,
gosh.
yeah. I think the Fellowship came out in 2001.
Oh geez. Doesn't feel
2000,
like it's been that long ago.
yeah. Return of the King was Christmas 2003.
Wow.
So,
Wow. Okay.
and it hurts because you really want those things to matter. You really want those things to fix problems.
Right.
And so, in utter frustration, in sort of like, how do I combat the darkness if I can't enjoy fantasy anymore?
Right.
And for me, that was, I think I'm going to try my hand at doing what Stephen King has been doing all his life, which is I'm going to see if I can't write a horror story,
Yeah.
seeing if I can't battle the darkness in a different way. And it really kind of like opened new doors for me as far as like a storyteller or being a writer, because I finally got back to the point where it's like, I think I'm gonna, maybe try a hand at writing a fantasy story these days, or something like that. And kind of restarting the engine, reigniting the fire of, you know, why did I like King Arthur so much?
Right.
Because of this,
Yeah.
and so that's where the inspiration comes from for me anyway.
Okay. Okay. Do you have a favorite Stephen King? Like I know you said that you did a lot with like the short stories and stuff. Do you prefer that, or do you have a certain novel of his that you prefer?
I really love The Stand and I really love It. There are a couple of things about It that when the first time I read it, I'm like going, um, hey, I don't think you should be doing that with kids.
Yeah, yeah.
And in the novel, not in the movie so much, or the miniseries, uh, the thing at the end with the big giant turtle, and I was like, I'm not really sure. I think my favorite Stephen King stuff is the Dark Tower stuff because
Okay.
that is the marriage of horror and fantasy.
Right.
That is the gunslinger, the knight,
Yeah.
who is on a quest to save the world. And to me, I mean, that's what I aspire to write something that uh, grabs you and just makes you want to read page after page.
Right.
And I highly recommend that if you have to go on a long drive, to grab the Gunslinger on audiobook and just plug that in and you'll be transported. It's fantastic stuff.
Oh yeah.
As much as I love Idris Elba and Matthew McConaughey, don't watch the movie. No.
Yeah. It wasn't as well received. I actually have not seen the movie. But I heard that it didn't live up. But there are some of like the TV shows and stuff that they've done on like Hulu that I've enjoyed when it comes to Stephen King.
Yeah, I'm currently working my way through 11/22/63 with James
Yeah,
right now. So yeah.
yeah, yeah. And I'm looking at the book right now. I've got it right here on my bookshelf. So when you switched, so you started at a young age reading and things. When did you decide, you know what, I want to try my hand in acting? And what was some of your early works that you did that kind of inspires you to keep going?
Um, so I grew up in a very mm, I grew up in a very strange time. Well, I mean, I was born in the 60s and I was 10 in 1973. And I don't have like a whole lot of concrete memories before like the age of 8, 9, or 10.
Mhm.
So I grew up with a lot of very strange entertainment on Saturday morning cartoons, and because if you've ever seen any of the old Sid and Marty Krofft shows, the cartoons and stuff that were coming out of hippy dippy trippy Hollywood at that time, they kind of affect you in a certain way. But I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
I also grew up with the Carol Burnett show and sort of like this a couple of movies that were really popular at the time were That's Entertainment, which was snippets of old 30s and 40s musicals from old Hollywood with Fred Astaire and Gene Kelly and all this kind of stuff. And so I grew up in a time when old Hollywood was giving way to new Hollywood and this sort of car crash between the Busby Berkeley musicals and Burt Reynolds, Clint Eastwood, punch 'em ups.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and I grew up with movies like The Towering Inferno and Jaws and The Bad News Bears. And at the time, it seemed like something that was really accessible. Like if you wanted to act and you went to Hollywood, all you had to do was be in the right place at the right time and you talk to the right person, and next thing you know, you're walking on set and being part of a movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this was before the fitness craze really took off. So a lot of the guys that I admired acting wise, that I wanted to emulate, whether they were uh, Paul Newman or Marlon Brando or Steve Martin or Harvey Korman and something like that,
Mhm.
they were just regular guys. They didn't have zero body fat, six pack,
Yeah.
uh, because I like Ryan Gosling, I like Ryan Reynolds, I like Hugh Jackman, and I'm so glad that I'm living and breathing to be able to see some of the stuff that I loved growing up come to
Right.
life as far as like all of the superhero stuff. But the actors that I grew up and sort of that inspired me to want to step on the stage were just like regular Joes that had, maybe a little bit of a pot belly or whatever. And so I didn't spend a whole lot of my time as an actor working on my physical person.
Right.
I approached the acting from a very sort of cerebral, vocal kind of thing, and I grew up watching the Carol Burnett show and the original Saturday Night Live, and I learned a lot about timing, how to tell a joke, how to twist the phrase and make it sound really funny, or
Right.
I learned, as a safety mechanism to do funny voices because that made me friends in school
Yeah.
and kept me from being shoved in a locker or something like that. And so from an early age, I really wanted to perform, and I didn't really sort of, and I think this is very true for a lot of people. We don't think about the long term kind of things. We just think about, well, I just need to do this now, and then that'll happen.
Right.
And I just knew that I had this. By the time I got to be a sophomore in high school, I was like, okay, I think this is what I want to do because sophomore year, I was taking a French class and we had a talent show that we had to perform in. And my friend Ron Elliott and I performed the Czechoslovakian brothers from Saturday Night Live, the two wild and crazy guys,
Okay.
Steve Martin and Dan Aykroyd.
Yeah.
And when we walked out on stage wearing the costume that they wore on the show and the crowd erupted in this giant applause, I was like, that's what I want to hear for the rest of my life. So from that point on, I started, taking drama classes and learning how to memorize lines and reading a lot of plays. And that was sort of like the jumping off point. That was the
Yeah.
got that going. Very long-winded reply to your question. So
It's all good. So I actually just found this out and I wanted to talk to you a little bit about this. You do comedy as well.
yeah. I
So
think comedy kind of ruined my acting career, actually.
really, why would you say that?
So I spent my first part of my college career was at Southwest Texas State University in San Marcos, Texas, which is now just Texas State.
Right.
And I was there from 84 through 89. I was I don't remember taking a lot of regular classes like English or math.
Yeah.
Just remember being at the theater department every day, doing plays and doing shows and spending far too many years having a good time in San Marcos, Texas. Um, but then when I graduated San Marcos and I went through the URTA auditions, which is the University Theater Resident auditions,
All right.
and went to Chicago and auditioned for a bunch of these graduate programs. I ended up getting a sort of kind of a free ride to the University of Pittsburgh.
Oh, cool.
Uh, so when I went to the University of Pittsburgh, I ended up teaching beginning acting classes right away. So that's kind of like how I earned my stipend every month, as well as taking graduate student classes. Well,
Yeah.
part, one of the things that I sort of discovered while I was there was improv,
Hmm.
um, which at that time had not blown up like it is now. We didn't have
Right.
Whose Line Is It Anyway or some of these other shows. We just had what we called Friday Night Improvs, which was our way of allowing the undergraduate classes a chance to get up on stage and perform. And it was all done off script, off book, no lines memorized. Get up there, do what you want, and I loved it. It was such a fun time to be able to get up there and to say something
Yeah.
in such a in the right way at the right time and to get that big roar of applause, that big roar of laughter
Yeah.
that I remember back in high school going, that's what I want to hear for the rest of my life.
Right.
And so after doing that for 2 or 3 years, it became very hard to pick up a script and try to learn lines because I was like, why do I need to learn lines? I'll just make it up off the top of my head, And and because human beings are, I think, at their core, kind of lazy.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I don't want to do that. Where's
Yeah.
the guy to do my dishes? That kind of thing. Uh, I think there was that part of me was like, yeah, I don't think I want to do regular acting anymore. I'd much rather just sort of wing it and see what happens. And when that happens and you stop going to auditions, when you stop working on the craft of acting, because you really do have to work at it.
Yeah.
It's a You can have talent for days, you can have natural ability for days, but there is some work you need to do. There are some technical aspects to the craft of acting that you need to get down before you can just sort of like, walk around saying, yeah, I'm good at this or whatever.
Right.
Um, and if again, like any muscle, if you don't exercise it, it goes away. And I was spending far too many times, too much time not doing that. And when I came back from Los Angeles after doing Power Rangers, I moved back to Pittsburgh and I got a job doing theater for money. It was a murder mystery dinner theater, and
Oh,
it was a marriage of memorizing lines and also making it up as you go.
yeah.
Because but when you do murder mystery dinner theater, you perform in the audience at different
Yeah.
tables while they're eating dinner, and you're doing this thing. So you're trying to get their attention, you're trying to get them to laugh, and again, it was something that all of this stuff that I had absorbed as a kid or absorbed as a young adult growing up and comedic timing and being able to pause at just the right time before you say something, because you get into the rhythm of it, you get into the patter of it, and like any drug, it gets to be like a very addictive kind of thing. And so for 3 or 4 years, that's what I did for a living. I did murder mystery dinner theater 4 or 5 nights a week, and odd jobs on the weekend or whatever. But that also afforded me the chance to write because after being with the company for about a year, we were kind of disappointed in the quality of the scripts that we were given it, and we would always improve on them. Whatever was given, we sat down as a group and said, okay, we need to change this and move this around, and we'll rewrite this speech and make it funnier.
Right.
So I said, you know what? I'm going to sit down. I'm going to write one of these things for us, and and it may not work, but I'm going to give it a shot. And so I wrote a western, a murder mystery dinner theater that takes place in the Old West, and I got to play the old gimpy sheriff's deputy, and my other friend who ran the company, he got to play the white hat cowboy, and and you had to solve a murder mystery in the Old West,
Yeah.
and just had a lot of fun with it. And so from that point on, I got to write scripts, and I was acting and performing and writing scripts. So I was very happy for doing that for a while. So yeah.
Right. So you brought something up just a minute ago, and I kind of wanted to talk about this for a minute. And you said this was after you had come back from, recording for Power Rangers. What was the process like for auditioning for that? And because I know it was a little different, uh, you, you weren't in front of the camera with other people. They had the green paint on you whenever you did get the part. In fact, So what was the audition like for that?
Um, when I was going to my undergraduate college in Southwest Texas State, I had a bunch of friends that moved out to Los Angeles while I went to the East Coast to go to graduate school.
Mm-hmm.
when I finally moved out to Los Angeles in the summer of 1992, I sort of already had like a network of people out there that I knew from my undergraduate days. And one of those people was a woman by the name of Stacy Fish. And Stacy was working at Saban uh, in a production position, kind of like an assistant director or second assistant director.
Hmm.
And she would work on their straight to video movies that Saban was doing at the time.
Okay.
And so I had arrived in Los Angeles in August of 1992. In early October, Stacy called me and said, "Hey, we're working on this kids television pilot, and there's a part I think you'd be good for. Do you want to come down and audition for it?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure. That's why I came to Los Angeles, was to
Yeah.
audition." So, and I went down to this building. It wasn't the Saban building at the time. It became the Saban building later on. But and I went up to whatever floor it was that I was supposed to go to, and I was expecting it to be like any other uh, agent audition where you would go into a room and they would have a camera set up and you would read lines and then they would tape you and then they would say, "Thanks very much for coming in. We'll call you." And then
Yeah.
you go home and never hear from them because that was sort of like my experience up to that point, and that was the experience of everybody that I sat around at a table. I was like, "Well, I've been here for 10 years and this is what I've done, blah blah blah." And I was doing improv theater while I was out there at an improv theater called the LA Connection. So, every Friday night after we would do a show or whatever, we would all go to, Jerry's Deli and bitch and moan about whatever we were doing. Again, you hear people's like, "Oh yeah, been in this town for 20 years and can't wait to do this for the rest of my life."
Yeah.
So I was expecting that, but when I got to the Saban building, it was just me and another guy, and they said, "Hey, we're going to cast this tonight, and we're going to shoot it next week. Are you available to shoot next week?"
Oh, wow.
And I was not going to say no. I was like, "Yeah, sure, whatever." And
Yeah.
I knew immediately that this was different because it didn't always happen that way, as that sort of, at least it was outside of my experience of knowing that.
Right.
Looking back on it, I think there are other times when people run into that situation where we're going to cast it right now. Are you ready?
Hmm.
Let's go.
Right.
And so the only information that we were given in my memory is, well, you're playing this character. His name is Zoltar. He's a 10,000-year-old wizard and he's trapped in a time warp. Go. And of course, I had just spent 5 years doing undergraduate acting training. I did 3 years of graduate acting training. I spent every Friday night doing improv comedy. I was doing improv now. I had all of the tools, all of the skill, or all of the um, whatever was necessary. I had that at my disposal at that moment.
Yeah.
And so I guess the point I'm trying to make is being prepared is like better than luck
Yeah. Right.
because you never know when you're going to have an opportunity crop up. And if you're not prepared, then luck's not going to help you all that much. So,
Right.
uh, it, I was very lucky that Stacy called me. I was very lucky to be there that day, but I also had all of the training and all of the skills necessary to do what I needed to do.
Right.
And when this other gentleman, who in my memory, um, because we all know memory is faulty and it rewrites and changes things all around. In my memory, he was a nice gentleman who had a very pronounced hawk-like nose and he was bald. And he sat in the other corner of the room and I sat in the other corner of the room and I could hear him doing the speech, but it was in a very sort of cartoony voice actor kind of way where he would do sort of like this. I don't want to say Dr. Robotnik, but it was very, I don't know, Power Rangers, welcome to the command center.
Ah, yeah.
And I was like, not really sure if that's what you want to, not really sure if that's what's called for here.
Yeah.
And I was reading the lines, and the only thing that kept cropping up in my head was like Zeus. This guy is like Zeus. He's up
Right.
on Mount Olympus. He's a voice of authority. He's a voice of mentorship and leadership. And so he's trying to guide these heroes to making the right choice to take on the mantle of the hero and fight the bad guys.
Right.
And so that's when I got the deep voice. And when they called me into the audition and they made me stand up at a table and I met the original cast and the director and the producers, that's what I used. And that's what we ended up using for the show.
That's
So,
awesome.
yeah.
Yeah, that's really awesome. So, what do you like to do in your spare time whenever you're not going to conventions or doing appearances or, anything else? What do you like to do for fun?
I am currently running two Shadow Dart campaigns. So I spend a lot of my time plotting and planning fantasy role-playing stuff. That's what I
Okay. Well, that sounds like fun. So I actually am part of a group called I told you earlier, Zio to Hero. I'm actually part of their network, in fact, and they're trying to get me to do a online, like kind of a
how
role
that's how I
playing
put it.
game,
Oh,
and I've never done it before, So, what are some things that maybe like tips you could give me for being a first time person trying to do like a role playing game?
Um, have you settled on what system you're going to use for your online interface portal kind of thing that you're doing?
I don't think so. I don't know. I mean, we're all on Discord, so I'm
Yeah, yeah,
possibly something like that.
we use Discord for voice,
Okay.
but as far as like the presentation of the world, I use Foundry, which is a virtual tabletop.
Okay. Okay.
Roll 20 is another virtual tabletop. Fantasy Grounds is another virtual tabletop.
Okay.
And that's where you use your tokens to move around so people can actually see the environment that they're playing in and as they crawl their way through the dungeon and face all these nasty monsters and stuff. That's what I use. And I spend a lot of my time uh fixing up maps or looking for maps and coming up with NPCs and dialogue for NPCs and quests
Yeah.
and
So you go
setting
all
up.
out then.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I've been playing D&D and role-playing games since 1978.
Wow. Okay.
And it's something that's very near and dear to my heart as far as uh had I known back in 1979 that you could make a living as a dungeon master, I would have not gone to acting. I would have just spent my entire time trying to become a professional dungeon master. That would have been my thing because I get a great deal of satisfaction and enjoyment out of world building about uh,
It's
naming.
creating.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you draw maps and you raise mountains and you name the mountains and you put a lake over here, you put a river down this way, and then you build this town and this village and this city over here. And it's it's Willy Wonka. It's pure imagination. It's, you know, creating worlds that people walk through and
Yeah.
can't wait to walk through again. And I mean, I run two groups, and my Thursday night group, I have at least one player who's like, there are too many days between sessions, man. When are we playing again, man? When are we
Yeah.
playing?
I need my
And
fix.
yeah, and again, it's like that cheer, that roar of the crowd of I want to hear that noise for the rest of my life.
Right.
And so yeah, I mean, I highly encourage anybody who likes those things. I mean, the amount of debate and back and forth that's going on in the role-playing community these days is it's very spiky.
Yeah. Yeah.
I grew up playing old school, and there are a lot of great things about uh, the hobby today. And the most fantastic thing about the hobby is that anybody can do it, everybody.
Right. Right.
And the fact that it welcomes everybody. I don't care where you're from or what you believe or what you look like or what you feel or who you think you are or whatever. It's just sort of like, welcome in, come on in,
Yeah.
sit down, roll the dice, have a good time.
Yeah.
And so as far as like that, I'm like, yay, we won the internet. As far as because I grew up and it was in the middle of the satanic panic and
Yeah.
people saying, it's worse than drugs because, all this kind of stuff. Um, and again, much like reading comic books when I was 8 and loving Captain America and seeing Chris Evans bring Cap to life,
Yeah.
I've grown up to see the hobby that I enjoyed when I was 16, 17 years old become the world's biggest role-playing game ever.
Right. Yeah.
And that's very validating for me because it's like I didn't waste my time.
Yeah. So you said one, and I believe that's what we're going to use, and that's the roll 20. Is that one
Yeah,
that
yeah.
you said?
Roll
Yeah,
20.
I believe that's what he said, but I'm excited for it. It's
Yeah.
something I've never done it before, and I was one of those. I was raised in a very um, conservative home to
Yep.
where it was still considered, that kind of stuff was not, it was kind of frowned upon and everything. And now, I'm
Of
finding
the
these are
devil.
my people.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but it's I'm excited to do this. It's and I get to do it with my friends, and since doing this show, I have actually found my people,
Yeah.
found my geeky people that I talk to every day. So it's really nice finding those.
We're all pretty great, man.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So going back to the comedy side of things. Now, did you do stand up as well?
No, I was never brave enough to do stand up because stand up is
It's rough. It's
well,
hard.
for me, stand up is basically saying I'm going to walk out here in front of us in front of a firing squad and it'll be fun.
Yeah.
Because you know, you have to have a thick skin
Yeah.
if you're going to be an actor. You have to have a thick skin if you're going to be any sort of like creative person because you're always going to hear people saying that sucks or
Yeah.
this doesn't look right or whatever. But to be a stand-up comedian is to go out in front of a hostile audience who is just waiting for you to screw up
Yeah.
so they could heckle you off the stage. To me, that's like, nah, I don't think my skin is that thick. I much preferred the ensemble of improv comedy where I got to play off somebody else on stage.
Yeah.
And if I wanted to, I could break the fourth wall and talk to the audience and go, "Did you take a look at this guy?" And there was sort of a buffer
Yeah.
between me and the audience. But
Right.
stand up is much too you're too naked, I
Yeah.
guess is the right way to express it. I mean, I applaud anybody that can get up and do it. I mean, I had friends in LA that I went to support their stand-up shows, and uh, I just marvel at the fact that you're able to get up there and just tell these jokes that you came up with back at your apartment,
Right. Right.
and to see them get a laugh that way is great. But I was like, that's not for me. No thanks. I don't think I could do that.
So there was something that I saw that you brought up on your Instagram recently, and I kind of wanted to give you a chance to talk about this. And I also wanted to ask, how many times has this happened? And it's the post that you made about Cameo just the other day.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know, um, you have people that are trying to send you lines to read. I'm guessing you were
Well,
saying, or
I had gotten a request that was a happy birthday request, and the body of the information that I was given didn't say anything about happy birthday.
oh,
It was written as a speech to a person telling them about how great they were, how powerful they were, that they were in a position to be a great leader. And then it ended with a lot of very Power Ranger like
yeah,
dialogue or affirmations like "Go Go Forever Red."
right, right,
And I was like, I can't do this
right,
because it may have been a very sincere I'm trying to wish my brother happy birthday and I want Zordon to tell him all of this stuff.
Yeah.
And that may have been the very sincere intent of it.
Right.
But the way it was presented to me, the way it came across in Cameo was like, please read this all in the Zordon voice.
Yeah.
And whenever you send them the Cameo, they can do whatever they want to with it. So
Right.
it would be easy for them to rip that dialogue and plug it into a YouTube video or whatever.
Right.
And so I was like, I can't, I'm, it's my policy not to do this kind of stuff. I'm happy to deliver a happy birthday message, asking them to come to the command center in the Zordon voice, but then I will
Right.
talk to them as me about stuff, but I'm not going to do big speeches about go fight win as Zordon.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, again, kind of circling back to the AI thing of like, you're taking my voice, you're using it for another project, and
Hmm.
you're not compensating me correctly for it. Cameo,
Right.
I don't charge a lot for cameos.
Yeah.
There are some actors out there, some B and A-list guys or high profile wrestlers that'll charge you $400, $500 for a cameo. And I'm not
Yeah.
doing that.
Right.
I'm doing a $30 cameo or a $25 cameo, whatever.
Yeah.
So to try to use my performance in that way is not properly compensating the labor that was given for it. Do you know what I
Right.
mean? If you
Yeah.
want to hire an actor to play your Zordon in your project,
Yeah.
hire an actor
Yeah.
to, and compensate them correctly. Don't
Right.
try to cheapen it by going the low dollar route, or whatever. So
Right.
I mean,
Don't be shady, y'all.
I'm sorry.
I said, don't be shady, y'all.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't post it as sort of like a finger wagging, don't do this
Oh,
kind of.
yeah. Yeah.
I just posted it as sort of like a protective, hey, I'm just not going to do this.
Right. Right. And that makes total sense. I was just being a goof when I said,
Oh
don't
yeah.
be shady, y'all.
Well, I mean, there are a lot of shady people out there, and they'll do shady stuff. I mean,
There are. Yes.
that's I love and I also hate being a human being. It's love hate.
That's, yeah.
Yeah.
So when it comes to the conventions, you've got conventions that you're doing. What is one of your favorite interactions that you've had with someone at a convention?
We used to have a fan that would come to every ranger stop. This was an individual who had a lot of health problems. He came around in a wheelchair. He had a device to help him breathe and this sort of thing.
Okay.
And he was there every time.
Mhm.
And every interaction with him, he was just so happy and very um, just great to interact with him. And then, we got the news that he had passed away because of his health problems.
Yeah.
And all of us came together to do like a group message for his family and stuff. And that was great.
Cool.
The other thing that I think is like one of my most favorite memories is when Kyle Higgins recruited some of us to do a live reading for the Shattered Grid comic book. And
Okay. Yeah.
we did that at Power Morphicon 2018, 2016, something like that.
Mhm.
And what was great is that Kyle had set it up so that my microphone was going to have the same voice modulation effect that they used for the show.
Oh, cool.
But nobody else on the panel knew that.
Yeah.
So when it came time for Zordon to speak for the first time, and Peter Adrian is sitting next to me, and I forget who's sitting on this side, but I lean forward into the mic and I say, "To all those who hear these words," and it echoed throughout the entire room. Peter basically stood up out of his chair and was like, "Holy shit, it's Zordon!" And, I think that's my favorite thing because I got to act with all of these other Power Rangers, and I got to act with Barbara
Yeah.
Goodson across the table from her. So Zordon and Rita were bing, 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 bang. And, it was like being on the show again, and that was very cool.
That is cool. That is cool.
And
What
that's
would
up on YouTube. You can actually go watch it. So
I'm probably gonna go watch it right after this is over then. So I like to ask this question as well when I have people on here, especially ones that do conventions and stuff. What's the weirdest thing you've ever been asked at a convention?
the weirdest thing I've ever been asked is to draw something on somebody's skin so that they could then go get it tattooed.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
so I mean, I've written "May the power protect you," and they'll go get "May the power protect you" tattooed on them.
Yeah.
Or I've seen a number of people that will come up, and I think it's very cool. It's
Yeah.
not necessarily weird. It's just so surreal that, my face is on somebody's skin.
Yeah.
Uh, and it's one of those things that made me think, how the hell did I get here? Uh,
Yeah.
life is a very strange trip indeed. And, but it's great. We've been all around the world convention wise to, from Jakarta to Ireland to Lima, Peru, and Mexico and Belgium, uh and just to see everybody's face light up when you walk out, or when they get to meet their favorite character, their favorite ranger for the first time, is
Right.
really, really cool.
Yeah.
And it just reminds you that we're more alike than we are different. And
Yeah.
stop listening to what social media and online keeps telling you about how those people over there are the bad guys,
Yeah. Yeah.
because we're not.
Right. Right.
But since online interaction is fed by outrage,
Yeah.
which is again monetized,
Yeah.
so yeah,
So we're kind of coming up close to a close here.
yeah, yeah.
So I've just got a couple more questions for you before I get you off of here.
Okay.
Do you have anything coming up that maybe you want to talk about?
Not really. No, I mean, uh, I don't have any like projects in the works. I mean, uh, I still need to finish the fourth Lincoln Bright novel to round it out,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't feel inspired to work on it because of the world that we live in.
Yeah.
Um, I would much rather spend my time entertaining friends through my other means or whatever, or and going to a convention every then.
Right.
And I don't mean this to sound this in a very pessimistic kind of way. It's really sort of like a self-defense mechanism of me not really wanting to put a whole lot of energy into a project I'm working on,
Yeah.
because this is going to sound really dark.
Okay.
I don't have a lot of faith in my fellow human beings these days, because I mean, it sounds contradictory to what I just said about, we're more alike than we're different. Uh, I just feel that uh, we're going through a very interesting time. And by interesting, I don't mean that in a good way. um, I think we're on the cusp of something that could be, who knows? I don't want to use words like catastrophic, or because it could very well opposite be the complete opposite of that.
Yeah.
But it does feel on some level that we are racing towards the edge of something.
Right.
And um, there's part of me that's like, I just want to see where this is going,
Right.
because um, it may, all of the stuff that I could be working on could go for naught,
I get you.
because of all that. So um, that's the self-defense mechanism part of it, is like, I don't want to put my energy into something that's going to end up as stardust. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
And other people will be, well, that's kind of a coward's way out, and I'm not really sure if it is or not. It's just a personal choice.
Totally get that.
And there would be other people that were like, well, heck no, Dave, I'm gonna fight as much as I can and just do as much as I can and all this kind of stuff. I'm like, more
Yeah.
power to you, I applaud you for doing that. I mean, that's great. I'm 62 now and I'm like, I don't have the energy I did at 23, and to go out there and go, I'm gonna do it, that's
So, do you have any advice for somebody or advice that maybe you wish you would have got when you first started out?
if you want to be a part of something, if you want to become an actor, if you want to become a writer, if you want to become an artist, a painter, if you want to be the world's best accountant, then do it.
Yeah.
I mean, there are a lot of people who will sit around and go, man, I would really like to write a book.
Yeah.
Then write it.
Right.
I mean, sorry.
You're good.
I don't think that we were put on this planet to work. I don't think that we were put here to put in 40 hours for somebody so that we could get a check to
Yeah.
make sure that our lights stay on. Okay.
Right. I agree.
We we're all creative beings. We all have stories to tell. We all have some sort of aspiration that we want to reach.
Yeah.
And you have to, at some point, say, stop talking about it, stop thinking about it, and just do it.
Right.
And you're going to hit a wall. You're going to hit road bumps. You're going to hit people shutting doors in your face. You're going to get told no,
Yeah.
no, no, no. Forget all of that. Just do it for you.
Right.
I mean, when I was growing up, there was no internet. There were no blogs. There were no uh, story portals where you could write your stuff on and post it to Tumblr and then have people comment on it and generate this entire story thread or whatever. There was none of that.
Yeah.
It was like if you wanted to write a book, you had to type it up on paper, put it in a box, and send it off to a publisher, and never hear anything for like a year before you get a pink slip back saying, "Sorry, we didn't like it."
Yeah. Yeah.
And but I mean, you have to at some point say, "I'm going to put these words down." And you're going to sit there and you're going to move the keyboard and you're going to type and you're going to put one word after the other. It's like one foot after the other, word after word after word after word after word. And eventually you're going to say, wow, this is 30,000 words. Dang, that's awesome. And then you send it out and you should be very proud of every pink slip that you get. Again, a piece of advice from Stephen King in his book on writing: collect all of those pink slips, put them in a box,
Yeah.
and or put them in a metal case and say, look at all these medals I've gotten because I dared to go out onto the battlefield and throw this story out there. And people said no, and I took it up and I changed a few words and I tried it again. And my best advice is if you want to do something, then just try it, just do it. Because if you don't, you're going to end up 30 years down the road going, I should have done it. I
Yeah.
should have done that.
Right.
And that's the worst thing that you can ever, that's the worst feeling as a creative, as an artistic type, is to sit there and go, man, I let that go by. But
Yeah.
and then again, it's never too late to start. If you're 50 or if you're 60 now and you haven't written that book yet and you finally have the time, freaking write it, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that's how you fight the darkness. That's how you push all of the bad things away, is you put something bright out into the world. And maybe only three people see it, or maybe only two, but then again, it may be 100. It may be 100,000 people see it. And somewhere along the line, somebody's going to say, you know what? I know exactly what you're talking about. I felt the same thing. And that's what it's all about. The connection between each of us and saying, you and I,
Yeah,
we got it. So, yeah.
If people want to follow you online, how can they do that?
They can follow me on Blue Sky at David J. Fielding at Blue Sky. They can find me on Spoutable. I am still on Twitter. I'm not going to call it the other thing. You can find me and you can also find me on Instagram. I deleted my Facebook long ago. Probably, I may, because of this Meta AI thing on Instagram and Threads, I may delete those guys too, because I don't know.
Yeah.
I've got this thing about billionaires, and I'm not really sure that they're necessary. And I'm not supposed to say that living in a capitalist country, but yeah.
So do you have any?
I like my billionaires to be old and reclusive and sitting in a house somewhere and experimenting on frogs. That's how I like them. I don't like them being online telling them, we need to take over England because their government is wrong or whatever. But
yeah. The one thing I like is that the joke that says, we've got all these billionaires, but nobody's been Batman yet. So,
oh, that's the thing. It's like, I don't want to get into it. We'll talk about it off camera, but
right.
Yeah.
So, do you have any final thoughts before I get you off of here?
Thanks for having me on. That was great. If I do meet you at a convention, I'm going to ask you all about your role-playing stuff and how that all went. So
awesome. Yeah. Well, David, thank you so much for tonight. I've really been looking forward to this. I've enjoyed talking to you, and who knows, maybe we'll get you back on down the road somewhere.
Yeah, it'd be a pleasure. Yeah, I'd love to do that. I love coming back to podcasts I've already done before. I know these guys from Ohio. They do the Canned Air podcast, and I'm on their Christmas show every year. So.
Oh, cool. Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, we're going to sign off here for now, but I will talk to you for a few more minutes after this.
Okay.
Thank you again so much.
You bet.
If You Give a Dad a Podcast.